The chamber was quiet except for the soft hum of translation devices. Hundreds of alien species filled the great hall of the Galactic Council, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that sparkled like diamonds to massive creatures that floated in containment fields. Ambassador Taman stood among them, representing the newest member of this ancient organization. Earth had joined the Council only 2 years ago, and most species still viewed humans with suspicion. A distress signal cut through the silence. The holographic display at the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing a terrified insectoid creature. Its compound eyes reflected pure terror as it spoke in rapid clicks and whistles that the translators struggled to interpret. "The Krathen have come," the Velen messenger said, its voice breaking. "3 of our worlds are already dark. They consume everything. Our defenses mean nothing to them. We beg the Council for help. Please, we have children, we have families. Do not let us die alone in the darkness." The transmission ended abruptly. The hologram showed the Velen cluster, a peaceful collection of agricultural worlds on the edge of known space. Red markers indicated Krathen presence. There were so many red markers. Council Speaker Velnuth rose from his crystalline throne. The ancient being had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic history. His voice carried the weight of that experience. "The Krathen swarm has returned. We all know what this means." A reptilian counselor stood up. "We must evacuate the Velens immediately. Military intervention is suicide. Every species that has fought the Krathen has been destroyed or forced to flee." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Taman felt his stomach tighten. He had read the classified reports about the Krathen. They were not just invaders. They were a plague that consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing but dead worlds behind. "We cannot abandon them," a small amphibious delegate said weakly. "The Velens have been our trade partners for centuries." Velnuth's crystalline body dimmed. "Sentiment does not change reality. We do not have the military strength to oppose the Krathen. We are scientists, traders, philosophers. We evolved beyond warfare millennia ago. The Council will authorize evacuation ships, but nothing more." Taman rose to his feet. Every eye in the chamber turned toward him. He felt their stares, their judgment. Humans were the newcomers, the violent ones, the species from a death world who still built weapons and trained soldiers. "Earth will send help," Taman said clearly. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates laughed. Others looked shocked. Velnuth raised a limb for silence. "Ambassador, humanity has 3 warships in this sector. The Krathen fleet numbers in the thousands. What could you possibly accomplish?" Taman met the speaker's gaze without flinching. "We can try. That's more than abandonment." "You would send your people to die for strangers?" Velnuth asked. "Yes," Taman replied simply, "because it's the right thing to do." The vote came quickly. The Council authorized evacuation only. They noted humanity's offer in the official record with what Taman suspected was pity. As the session ended, delegates avoided him. They thought he had just ordered his species' warriors to their deaths. Maybe he had across the sector. Captain Dehayan received the transmission on the bridge of the warship Iron Will. He read the orders twice, then looked at his crew. Lieutenant Hannah sat at the weapons console, her fingers already dancing across holographic controls. Chief Engineer Hyan Wu monitored the ship's systems from his station. Young Ensign Yuna analyzed data at the tactical display. They had served together for 3 years. They had seen combat during the border skirmishes with pirates and rogue mining operations. But this was different. The Krathen were not pirates. They were the monsters that made other species flee in terror. "Orders are for assessment only," Dehayan said. "We jump to the Velen cluster, observe the situation, and report back. No engagement." Hannah looked up from her console. "And if the Velens are dying while we watch?" Dehayan did not answer. He did not need to. They all knew what the right thing to do was. They also knew it might kill them. "Engineering, prepare for FTL jump," Dehayan ordered. "All hands to combat stations. Weapons hot, shields at maximum." The Iron Will was a human warship built in the orbital shipyards above Seoul. It carried Railguns that could crack asteroids, missile pods loaded with nuclear-tipped warheads, and experimental plasma torpedoes that had never been tested in real combat. By galactic standards, human weapons were terrifying. They were designed to destroy, not disable. They came from a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. As the ship's FTL drive powered up, Hannah pulled up intelligence files on the Krathen. Her face went pale as she read. The Krathen were not individuals. They were a hive mind, billions of organisms sharing one consciousness. They spread like a disease, consuming organic matter and converting it into more Krathen. They had no interest in negotiation or peace. They existed only to feed and grow. "Captain," Hannah said quietly, "these things don't just kill, they consume planets. Strip them bare, we're not ready for this." Daehyun stared at the view screen as stars began to stretch into lines. The ship shuddered as it entered faster than light travel. Somewhere ahead, billions of Velans were fighting for their lives. Somewhere ahead, an unstoppable swarm was devouring worlds. His expression hardened. His hands gripped the command chair. He thought of the council delegates laughing at humanity's offer. He thought of Velnath's pity. He thought of all the peaceful species who had evolved beyond warfare and now could not defend the innocent. "Then we'd better learn fast," Daehyun said. The Iron Will jumped into the darkness, carrying its human crew toward a battle they might not survive. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its debates and philosophical discussions. Ahead of them, the Krathen swarm waited, hungry and endless. Humanity had answered the call for help. Now they would discover if Deathworlders could stand against the galaxy's greatest nightmare. The Iron Will dropped out of FTL and immediately every alarm on the bridge started screaming. The view screen showed a vision of hell. 3 Velan worlds hung in space like dead eyes, their atmospheres turned black with Krathen biomatter. Millions of organic ships swarmed around them like insects around a corpse. The remaining colony worlds were surrounded, their orbital defenses firing uselessly into the endless swarm. Daehyun gripped his command chair. As the ship's sensors processed the nightmare before them, the numbers kept climbing. 5,000 Krathen vessels. 10,000. 20,000. The counter finally stopped at 47,000 individual contacts. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," Communications Officer J reported. "It's the Velan colony on the 4th planet. They're begging for evacuation." On the screen, a Velan civilian appeared. She held a small child in her arms, its tiny body trembling. Behind her, buildings burned. "Please," she said simply. "Please help us." Daehyun looked at his crew. Hannah's jaw was set, her eyes hard. Hyun-woo nodded once. Yuna looked scared but determined. They all knew the orders. Assessment only. Do not engage. "Helm, take us in," Daehyun ordered. "All weapons free. Target the closest concentrations." Hannah's hands flew across her console. "Sir, we're outnumbered 50-1. "Then we'd better make every shot count," Daehyun replied. The Iron Will dove into the swarm. Human railguns opened fire, sending tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed. Each shot punched through multiple Krathen bioships, the kinetic energy tearing them apart. Missile pods launched, nuclear warheads detonating in brilliant flashes that vaporized dozens of enemy vessels at once. The Krathen responded immediately. Thousands of bioships changed course, converging on the human warship. They fired organic projectiles that splashed against the Iron Will's shields like acid. The ship shuddered under the impacts. "Shields at 80%, Hyun-woo called out. 60%. "Captain, we can't sustain this." "Keep firing," Daehyun ordered. The bridge filled with smoke as a console exploded. A crewman screamed. Medical teams rushed to help, but Hannah never stopped firing. The weapon system cycled continuously, railguns glowing red-hot from sustained use. She targeted cluster points, places where the Krathen gathered most densely, maximizing casualties with each shot. In the chaos, Ensign Yuna stared at her tactical display. Something was wrong. The Krathen weren't fighting like individuals. Every ship moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. Because they were. The intelligence reports had mentioned it, but seeing it was different. The swarm was one organism with thousands of bodies. "Captain," Una shouted over the noise. "They're coordinating through pheromone signals. I'm detecting massive chemical transmissions between vessels. They're not separate entities. They're a hive mind with distributed consciousness." Hannah looked up from her weapons console, her eyes wide. An idea formed, crazy and desperate. The plasma torpedoes. If we could ignite their pheromone clouds, create a chain reaction across the fleet. That's insane, Hyan-Wu said. We'd have to get into the middle of them. The ship won't survive. Dae-Hyan watched the tactical display. More Krathan ships were arriving every second. The Velen colonies were hours from complete destruction. The Iron Will was already damaged, shields failing. They were going to die here anyway. They could die running, or they could die making it mean something. "All power to forward shields," Dae-Hyan ordered. "Helm, take us straight into the center of the swarm. Hannah, arm all plasma torpedoes. One shot. Make it count." The Iron Will turned and accelerated directly into the densest part of the Krathan fleet. Bioships swarmed around them like angry wasps. Acid projectiles hammered the shields. Alarms blared as systems failed. The hull began to buckle under the assault. "Forward shields at 20%, Hyan-Wu shouted. He diverted everything, pulling power from life support, from weapons, from anything he could. 10%. "Captain, we're not going to make it." "Yes, we are," Dae-Hyan said firmly. "Hana, fire on my mark." They plunged deeper. The viewscreen showed nothing but Krathan vessels, an ocean of organic ships pressing in from all sides. The bridge crew could hear the hull screaming as the metal bent. They were in the heart of the swarm now, surrounded by enemies, one wrong move from death. "Mark," Dae-Hyan said calmly. Hannah fired every plasma torpedo the ship carried. 8 experimental weapons streaked into the swarm. They detonated simultaneously, and the pheromone clouds ignited. Blue fire erupted across space, spreading from ship to ship faster than thought. The Krathan couldn't stop it. Their own biology betrayed them. The chemical signals they used to coordinate became weapons, carrying the plasma fire through the entire fleet. The swarm burned. Thousands of bioships exploded or melted or simply dissolved as the fire consumed them. The hive mind screamed, a psychic wail that made every human on the bridge clutch their heads in pain. Then silence. The Krathan fleet was gone. Nothing left but debris and fading embers. The Iron Will drifted in the aftermath, venting atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The medical bay overflowed with injured. Fires burned in 3 sections. But they had won. The Velen colonies were safe. Dae-Hyan sat in his damaged command chair, blood running from a cut on his forehead. His crew worked around him, damage control teams fighting to keep the ship alive. They had done the impossible. They had defeated a Krathan swarm, a shuttle approach from the surviving Velen colony. Dae-Hyan watched it dock, too exhausted to move. Minutes later, a Velen female entered the bridge. She was tall, her insectoid features both alien and beautiful. She looked around at the damaged bridge, at the wounded humans, at the price they had paid. "I am Matriarch Silith," she said through the translator. Her compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting. "Why? Why would you sacrifice yourselves for strangers?" Dae-Hyan stood slowly, feeling every injury. He looked at his crew, at Hana nursing a burned arm, at Hyan-Wu covered in coolant from a ruptured line, at Yuna helping carry a wounded crewman to medical. They were battered and bleeding, but they had saved billions of lives. "Because someone had to," Dae-Hyan said simply. Silith stared at him for a long moment. Then she bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in Velen culture. "The galaxy calls you Deathworlders. They fear you. But we will remember you as saviors." As the Velen matriarch left to coordinate rescue efforts, Dae-Hyan allowed himself to sink back into his chair. They had won this battle, but the cost was terrible. The Iron Will would need months of repairs. Good people had died today. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Galactic Council was probably horrified by what humans had done, but the Velans were alive. That had to be enough. News of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The peaceful species of the Galactic Council watched the combat footage in stunned silence. They saw the Iron Will dive into impossible odds. They saw human weapons tear through the Krathan swarm with brutal efficiency. They saw the plasma fire consume thousands of bioships in seconds. And they were terrified. Ambassador Temin stood in his quarters watching the galactic news feeds. Every species had an opinion about what humans had done. Some called it heroic. Most called it horrifying. The images played on repeat, human railguns punching through organic vessels, nuclear warheads vaporizing clusters of Krathan. The final apocalyptic chain reaction that had annihilated the entire swarm. A chime announced a visitor. Counselor Thex entered, his reptilian features unreadable. He was one of the few delegates who had spoken to Taman since the battle. The council convenes an emergency session in 1 hour, Thex said quietly. They're going to vote on humanity's membership. Let me guess, Taman replied bitterly. They want us expelled. Speaker Velmuth is leading the motion. He's convinced the other species that humans are too dangerous to remain in the council. Vex moved to the window, looking out at the station's central hub. They save billions of Velan lives, and the galaxy wants to punish them for it. Taman felt anger burning in his chest. We did what no one else would do. We answered their call for help. You proved you can kill, Vex said. That terrifies them more than the Krathan ever did. The emergency session was packed. Every delegate attended, their concern evident in the nervous energy that filled the chamber. Security had been doubled. Armed guards stood at every entrance, though Taman noticed they all watched him specifically. As if one unarmed diplomat was a threat, Speaker Velmuth called the session to order. His crystalline form pulsed with agitation. We gather to discuss the human situation. Evidence will be presented, then we will vote. The lights dimmed. Holographic displays showed footage from the battle. But this wasn't the sanitized news version. This was raw combat footage from the Iron Will's own systems. The delegates watched humans work with cold precision, firing weapons designed to maximize destruction. They heard the crew's communications, calm and professional, even in the face of death. They saw Hana smile as the plasma torpedoes launched. An amphibious delegate stood up, his voice shaking. They enjoyed it. Look at their faces. These creatures find pleasure in violence. They were saving lives, Taman countered. Of course they showed determination. Would you prefer they had been hesitant? Uncertain? That would have gotten everyone killed. Velmuth's voice cut through the argument. The issue is not whether they succeeded. The issue is how easily they succeeded. One ship destroyed a Krathan swarm that would have required an entire council fleet. What happens when they turn those weapons on us? Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. Taman looked around at the assembled delegates and saw it in their faces. They weren't angry about the violence. They were afraid of what it represented. Humans were predators in a galaxy of prey. We propose immediate expulsion, Velmuth declared. Humanity will be removed from the Council and restricted to their own star system. Any human vessel that enters Council space will be detained. This is madness, Taman said, standing. You're punishing us for helping you. We're protecting ourselves, a crystalline delegate responded. Your species is too dangerous to coexist with civilized society. Before Taman could respond, alarms blared. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red. A security officer rushed to Velmuth's throne, whispering urgently. The speaker's crystalline body went completely dark. The Krathan have returned, Velmuth announced. Long-range sensors detected them jumping into the outer system 30 minutes ago. They're heading for Council Prime. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions and demands. Some tried to flee. Others simply froze in terror. The most powerful government in the galaxy was reduced to panic in seconds. How many ships? Someone shouted. Millions, the security officer replied. It's not a swarm. It's the entire Krathen collective. Every bioship they have. They're coming here to destroy us. Taman felt cold clarity settle over him. This was it. The test. The galaxy would see what humans truly were. He activated his communicator. Taman to Earth Command. We need the fleet. All of it, now. 3 hours later, 3 human warships dropped out of FTL at the edge of Council space. The Iron Will was still being repaired, but Admiral Beora had brought everything else. The massive battleship Hammer of Soul dwarfed both escort carriers. The Phoenix Rising carried enough firepower to level a continent. Together, they represented humanity's entire military presence in this sector. Or was a legend among human military personnel. She had commanded fleets during the corporate wars in the asteroid belt. She had negotiated peace treaties and led humanitarian missions. She was both a warrior and a diplomat. And right now, the galaxy needed the warrior. Her transmission reached Council Prime instantly. This is Admiral Beora of the Earth Expeditionary Fleet. We received Ambassador Taman's distress call. We're holding position outside Council territory pending permission to enter. It was a calculated move. The fleet could have jumped straight to Council Prime. Instead, Beora waited at the border, showing respect for Council space even as a Krathen swarm approached. It was a message. Humans could be trusted to follow rules even in crisis. Speaker. Velnoth appeared on the communication channel. His crystalline form flickered with barely controlled fear. Admiral, the Council. We were preparing to vote on humanity's expulsion. I heard, Beora replied calmly. And now you're being attacked by the same enemy we just defeated. Interesting timing. Will you help us? Velnoth asked. The words seemed to pain him. That depends, Beora said. Are we still members of the Council? Or are we the dangerous predators you need to protect yourselves from? In the Council chamber, every delegate held their breath. The Krathen were hours away. Council defense forces were already evacuating civilians, preparing for the worst. Without human help, billions would die. But accepting that help meant admitting they were wrong. It meant acknowledging they needed the very violence they condemned. Councilor Lex stood. I move to table the expulsion vote indefinitely. Humanity remains a council member in good standing. Seconded, another delegate said quickly. All in favor? Velnoth asked. Every hand rose. Every species voted yes. Fear was a powerful motivator. Request granted, Admiral, Velnoth said. Council Prime is under threat. We need your help. Beora smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Copy that, Speaker. Earth Fleet is entering Council space. All civilian vessels are to evacuate to coordinates we're transmitting. Council Defense Forces, form up on our position. We're ending this. The 3 human warships jumped toward Council Prime. Behind them, the rest of humanity watched and waited. Ahead of them, a Krathen swarm numbering in the millions descended on the galaxy's capital. The peaceful species had called for help. And once again, the Deathworlders answered with armament, but this time, the entire galaxy would watch. This time, there would be no doubt about what humans were capable of. For better or worse, the Council would learn exactly what they had invited into their civilization. Council Prime hung in space like a jewel, a massive ring structure that housed trillions of beings from hundreds of species. It was the heart of galactic civilization, a monument to peace and cooperation. Now it was about to become a battlefield. Admiral Beora stood on the bridge of the Hammer of Soul, watching the Krathen swarm approach. The sensors couldn't count them all. Millions of bioships, maybe tens of millions, blotting out the stars like a living storm. The Council Defense Fleet looked pitiful in comparison, a few hundred ships designed for patrol duty, not war. All vessels, this is Admiral Beora, she transmitted on all frequencies. Civilian ships are to retreat to the coordinates we provided. You have 2 hours to evacuate. Defense forces form a perimeter around Council Prime. Do not engage until my command. A council captain responded immediately, his voice tight with fear. Admiral, with respect, we should evacuate everyone. We cannot win this battle. We're not evacuating, Ra said firmly. We're making a stand. Trust me, Captain. This is what humans do. On the surface of Council Prime, Commander Ji Woo led the human marine contingent through crowded evacuation centers. Millions of civilians pushed and shoved, trying to board transport ships. Parents clutched children. The elderly were trampled in the panic. It was chaos. Spread out, Ji Woo ordered his team. Help maintain order. Get the vulnerable loaded first. Children, injured, elderly. Move people calmly. We have time. The Marines deployed through the station, their presence immediately calming the crowds. Humans were intimidating to most species, tall and heavily built by galactic standards. But right now, their confidence was reassuring. They acted like this was manageable. Like survival was possible. In a medical facility, Dr. Subin worked alongside Velen scientists who had been studying the Krathen. Matriarch Silith had sent them as thanks for saving her people. Together, they analyzed samples recovered from the Velen battle, trying to find a weakness they could exploit. The hive mind is their strength and their weakness, Subin explained, her fingers flying across holographic displays. They share one consciousness across millions of organisms. If we could disrupt the neural chemistry that allows that connection. A Velen scientist clicked thoughtfully. A genetic weapon. A virus that targets their shared biology? Exactly, Subin agreed. But someone would have to deliver it to the Queen Mind, the central intelligence that controls the entire swarm. If we kill her, the whole collective dies with her. They both knew what that meant. A suicide mission into the heart of an army. Someone would have to fly directly into the swarm, find the Queen Mind's bioship, and deliver the weapon. They would never make it out alive. In orbit, the battle began. The Krathen swarm hit the defensive perimeter like a tidal wave. Acid projectiles filled space. Council ships fired energy weapons, destroying dozens of bioships, but hundreds more took their place. The defense fleet was being overwhelmed. All human vessels, weapons free, Ra ordered. Show them what Deathworlders can do. The Hammer of Souls main guns opened fire. Massive railgun rounds, each one the size of a small building, tore through the swarm. Each shot destroyed hundreds of Krathen ships, the kinetic energy creating shock waves that shattered everything nearby. The Phoenix Rising launched missile swarms, thousands of projectiles streaking into the enemy formation. Nuclear warheads detonated in spectacular chains, turning space into a field of miniature stars, but it wasn't enough. For every 100 Krathen destroyed, 1,000 more pressed forward. The swarm was learning, adapting. They began targeting human ships specifically, recognizing them as the greatest threat. Admiral, we have a breach on Deck 7, a damage control officer reported. Krathen boarding organisms. Seal that section and vent it to space, Ra ordered without hesitation. She couldn't afford to worry about individual casualties. The bigger picture demanded her attention. On Council Prime, Ji Woo received the alert. All Marines, we have Krathen organisms on the station. They must have seeded biopods during the initial approach. Arm up and move to intercept. Weapons hot? No mercy, the Marines moved through the corridors in tight formation. They found the Krathen in a residential sector, organic horrors that looked like crosses between insects and nightmares. The creatures were consuming everything, converting organic matter into more Krathen spawns. Ji Woo opened fire. Human weapons designed for war roared in the confined space. The Krathen fell, but more appeared. His team fought their way through corridor after corridor, each meter bought with blood. A Marine named Kite took a direct hit, acid dissolving his armor. He died screaming but never stopped firing. In the medical facility, Subin completed the virus. The weapon was loaded into a specialized containment device that could survive the delivery. Now they just needed someone crazy enough to carry it. Into the swarm, Captain Daehyun received the specifications aboard the damaged Iron Will. His ship was barely spaceworthy, held together by emergency repairs and prayers, but it could still fly. And Daehyun knew what had to be done. I'll deliver it, he transmitted to Admiral Bo-Ra. "Captain, that's a suicide mission," Bo-Ra replied. "The Iron Will won't survive the approach." "Then it's a good thing we're already written off as destroyed," Daehyun said. He looked at his remaining crew. Hana was there, arm in a sling but still at her weapons console. Han-Woo had refused to leave engineering despite his injuries. Yuna sat at her station, exhausted but determined. "We're going together." "Sir, you don't have to do this," Yuna said quietly. "Yes, we do," Daehyun replied. "Someone has to. And we're already dead according to the official reports. Might as well make it mean something." The Iron Will undocked from the repair station. The ship groaned as it accelerated, damaged systems protesting. But the engines held. Han-Woo coaxed every bit of power from the dying vessel, running calculations that kept them moving forward even as hull plates began to fail. They entered the swarm. Acid attacks stripped away the already damaged armor. Internal explosions rocked the ship. The crew compartments lost pressure, but the bridge held and the engines kept firing. Daehyun guided them deeper, following the psychic emanations that Yuna tracked. They were looking for the Queen Mind, the center of the hive consciousness. They found it. A bioship the size of a moon, protected by thousands of smaller vessels. It pulsed with organic light, and Daehyun could feel its alien intelligence pressing against his mind. The Queen Mind knew they were coming. It was amused. What could one dying ship accomplish? "Hannah, one last shot," Daehyun said. "Put everything we have into the main railgun. All power, everything." "That'll kill the ship," Hyun-Woo warned. "We're already dead," Daehyun replied. "Let's make it count." The Iron Will's final shot was magnificent. Every system on the ship fed power into one projectile. The railgun fired and the ship died around them. But the tungsten round punched through the Queen Mind's defenses like they were paper. It created a breach just large enough. "Now, Yuna," Daehyun ordered. The ensign launched the virus package through the breach. It embedded itself in the Queen Mind's organic structure and detonated, releasing the genetic weapon directly into the consciousness that controlled the entire swarm. The Queen Mind screamed. Not with sound, but with psychic agony that echoed across the galaxy. Every Krathan everywhere felt it. The hive consciousness shattered. Millions of bioships simply stopped, their coordination gone. Then they began to die, the virus spreading through their shared biology faster than thought. Daehyun watched the swarm collapse around them. The Iron Will was coming apart, life support failing, the crew dying. But they had won. He thought about all the lives they had saved. Billions of beings who would live because 4 humans had been willing to die. "For Earth," Daehyun whispered. "And for everyone who needed help." Then he hit the emergency beacon and launched the escape pods. 3 months after the Battle of Council Prime, the galaxy was still rebuilding. The Krathan were gone, completely extinct, their hive consciousness destroyed forever. Across hundreds of worlds, civilizations emerged from bunkers and shelters. Blinking in the sunlight, hardly believing they had survived, Admiral Daehyun stood on the observation deck of the new human embassy, watching construction crews repair damage to Council Prime's outer ring. His body had healed from the injuries sustained when the Iron Will broke apart. The escape pod had worked, barely. He and his crew had been rescued by Admiral Bo-Ra's forces. Pulled from the wreckage as heroes, he still had nightmares about it. About Hyun-Woo's face as the chief engineer fought to keep the engines running just a few seconds longer. About Yuna's hands shaking as she launched the virus. About Hana's grim smile as she fired that final shot. They had all survived, but pieces of them had died in that burning ship. The door opened behind him. Lieutenant Hannah entered, her arm finally out of the sling. She had been promoted and now served as the chief tactical instructor for the new integrated defense force. Teaching other species how to fight was strange work for someone who had spent years fighting, but she was good at it. "The memorial dedication is in an hour," Hannah said. "Are you ready?" "No," Daehyun admitted, "but I'll go anyway." They walked through the station together, past aliens who now nodded respectfully instead of avoiding them. The change was remarkable. 3 months ago, humans had been on the verge of expulsion. Now they were celebrated. Children of peaceful species played with toy versions of human warships. Newsfeeds praised Deathworlder courage. Politicians competed to be photographed with human military personnel. Dae-hyun wasn't sure how he felt about any of it. The memorial stood in the center of Council Prime's main plaza. It was a massive structure of stone and metal, shaped like a human warship pointing toward the stars. Carved on its surface were the names of every human who had died in the battles. There were too many names. Young people who would never go home. Families destroyed. Futures stolen. Thousands of beings attended the dedication ceremony. Every council species sent representatives. Ambassador Taemin stood with Speaker Velmuth at the memorial's base. The crystalline being looked diminished somehow, less certain than he had been. "We gather to honor those who gave everything," Velmuth began, his voice transmitted across the station. "The humans who fought when we would not. Who sacrificed when we would have fled. Who proved that civilization is worth defending, even at terrible cost." Dae-hyun listened to the speech with mixed feelings. It was nice that the council recognized their sacrifice. But part of him wondered if they truly understood. These peaceful species had evolved beyond warfare. They saw violence as primitive, something to be ashamed of. They admired human courage while being quietly grateful they didn't have to be warriors themselves. After the ceremony, Speaker Velmuth approached Dae-hyun privately. They stood together looking at the memorial, an ancient crystalline being and a scarred human admiral. "I was wrong about your kind," Velmuth said quietly. "I believe violence made you monsters. But you're something I didn't expect. You're warriors who choose when to fight. That's far more frightening than simple savagery." "We're not monsters," Dae-hyun replied. "We're survivors from a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight because we had to. But we also learned why fighting matters. Not for conquest or glory. For protection. For the ones who can't protect themselves." Velmuth's crystalline body pulsed thoughtfully. "My species evolved past warfare 10,000 years ago. We thought that made us superior. But when the Krathing came, we were helpless. You saved us because you never forgot how to be dangerous." "You didn't become weak," Dae-hyun said. "You became civilized. That's not a failure. But sometimes civilization needs someone willing to get their hands bloody so others don't have to." In another part of the station, Admiral Baeo-ra met with the Council's military committee. The room was filled with delegates eager to learn from human experience. They asked endless questions about tactics, weapons, training protocols. Baeo-ra answered patiently, but she could see their discomfort. They wanted to be safe without becoming warriors. They wanted the benefits of violence without the moral cost. "The key to effective defense is preparation," Baeo-ra explained. "You must train constantly. Maintain your equipment. Study potential threats. Most importantly, you must accept that sometimes violence is necessary. Not desired, but necessary." A delegate shifted uncomfortably. "But surely we can find peaceful solutions to most conflicts?" "Of course," Baeo-ra agreed. "Diplomacy should always be the first choice. But diplomacy only works when backed by the ability to enforce boundaries. The Krathing didn't negotiate. They consumed. Against such threats, your only options are fight or die." The delegates nodded, taking notes. But Baeo-ra suspected most of them would never truly embrace what she was teaching. They would build defenses and train soldiers. But in their hearts, they would still believe that evolved species shouldn't need such things. Humans would forever be the guard dogs of the galaxy. Necessary but never fully trusted. That evening, Dae-hyun found himself in a small memorial garden that had been built by Velen refugees. Matriarch Silith tended flowering plants that had been brought from her homeworld. She looked up as he approached, her compound eyes reflecting the artificial sunset. "Admiral," she greeted him warmly. "Come, sit. Tell me how you're adjusting to peace." Dae-hyun sat on a bench made for smaller species, his large frame awkward on it. "Honestly? I'm not sure I am. Everything feels strange. We fought and won, but I can't shake the feeling that we lost something important. Silith continued tending her plants. You lost innocence. The galaxy saw you as dangerous before, but now they know exactly how dangerous. They're grateful and terrified in equal measure. It's an uncomfortable position. Do you fear us? Daehyun asked. No, Silith replied immediately. I saw why you fight. Not for glory or conquest. You fight because someone must, and you're strong enough to bear that burden. The galaxy needs warriors, Admiral. They just don't want to admit it. On Earth, in a cemetery overlooking Seoul, a different conversation was taking place. Commander Jiwoo stood at the grave of one of his Marines. Kite had been 23 years old, fresh out of training, eager to prove himself. He had died holding a corridor so civilians could evacuate. His parents stood beside Jiwoo now, grief etched on their faces. He was a hero, Jiwoo said quietly. He saved hundreds of lives. Kite's mother nodded, tears streaming. I know, but I wish he hadn't had to. I wish the galaxy didn't need soldiers. I wish my son could have lived a long, peaceful life. Jiwoo had no answer for that. He wished the same thing. But wishing didn't change reality. The galaxy was dangerous. Threats existed, and someone had to stand against them. 6 months after the battle, the Galactic Council formally established a joint defense force. Human advisors trained personnel from every species. New warships were built, incorporating human weapons technology with alien innovations. Patrol routes were established. Early warning systems deployed. The galaxy was preparing to defend itself, but not everyone was happy with these changes. Isolationist movements formed on several worlds. They argued that militarization would lead to war between council species, that humans were corrupting peaceful civilizations, that violence would only breed more violence. Ambassador Taemin addressed these concerns in a historic speech before the full council. Every delegate attended, every species watching. We came to the stars hoping to find peace, Taemin began. Instead, we found war. But in that war, we also found purpose. Humanity will never stop being what we are. Survivors from a world that tried to kill us every day. A species that learned to fight because we had no choice. But we choose to use that strength not for conquest, but for protection. He paused, looking at the gathered delegates. Some watched with gratitude. Others with lingering fear. All with respect. You called for help. We answered with armament. With weapons designed to destroy. With tactics meant to kill. And yes, that frightens you. It should. Violence should never be comfortable. But I promise you this. Humanity will stand guard. We'll be the warriors so you don't have to. We'll carry the burden of bloodshed so your hands can remain clean. And we'll keep answering every call for help, no matter the cost. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the delegates began to stand. One by one, every species rose in a gesture of respect. Even Velnath stood, his crystalline form shimmering. Welcome to the council, humanity, the speaker said. Not as members, but as guardians. May you never regret the burden you've chosen to carry. That night, on the observation deck, Daehyun stood with his crew. Hana, Hyun-woo, and Yuna had all recovered. They wore their dress uniforms, medals gleaming. They were heroes now, celebrated across the galaxy. But standing together in the quiet darkness, they were just 4 people who had survived something terrible. Do you think it was worth it? Yuna asked quietly. All the death. All the sacrifice. Daehyun thought about the billions of lives saved. About children who would grow up because humans had been willing to fight. About civilizations that continued because 4 people in a dying ship had delivered a virus to a monster.